Hello, Luke here. In this demo, we're going to be setting up a managed Windows server for Ansible. This goes along with our Getting Started with Ansible series over at Automate SQL, and I'll put a link to the blog post in the description below. Let's get started. So I've switched over to my Windows Managed node, or the node that will be our Windows Managed node. If you're following along on the blog post, you can skip down to configuring WinRM on the Windows machine. There you'll find the 4 steps that we're about to go through in PowerShell. So the first thing is just make sure that you've read through the prerequisites. You need to be a local administrator on the machine, and then in this case, I don't have a domain set up just yet, and this is just in a work group. So go ahead and open up Windows PowerShell ISE as an admin, and the scripts that I'm going to paste in here you can find in the blog post as well. So the first step is to create the self-signed certificate. Next step is to enable WinRM or enable PS remoting. And step 3 is to use the certificate that we created, and we're going to enable SSL or HTTPS. We're going to enable a listener to use SSL, WinRM listener, and it's going to be listening over port 5986 instead of the default 5985. And our last step is to add a firewall rule to allow traffic in over port 5986. And again, if you're following along, this is just a virtual machine that I've set up in VMware Fusion, and I'm just using the evaluation edition of Windows Server 2022. You can find a link to that. I believe I've pasted it in my blog post as well. So I've switched over to my Ansible control node. Again, this was created in our previous blog post and demo. We'll go ahead and create just a simple host file or an inventory file. We'll cover the inventory files in more detail in an upcoming post. But let's go ahead and just create a new file. And I am connected to Ubuntu that's running in Windows Subsystem for Linux on my machine, and I've got Visual Studio Code up and running. So if you want to see those steps, again, it's in the previous post and previous video that's in this series. So now that we've got our blank host.ini file, I am going to go ahead and grab this. This is in the post as well. So my managed node name is SRV4, and then the IP address is this IP address. So you'll need to change this to match your environment. And we'll go over these additional variables as well in the next post. But real quick, the Ansible connection that we're going to use to connect to Windows is WinRM. We're going to ignore the cert validation. We're going to go over port 5986. The transport is NTLM. Again, we're not in a domain yet, so we can't use Kerberos. The operation timeout seconds is in 60, and then the read timeout is 300. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now I'll jump down here to terminal. I've already got a terminal window open, but if you don't, just click terminal and do new terminal. And you'll want to change the directory into the folder that's where you've created this host.ini file. And the command we're going to run is a ad hoc command. It's just Ansible, and we're going to pass in a -i host.ini. So that's basically saying that's our inventory file that we're going to use. The module that we're going to run is module named WinPing, just as a simple connection over WinRM to make sure that it's successful. SRv4, so it's going to go into the host file and it's going to connect to SRv4, which is this IP address. -u is the username that we're going to use, and we're going to be prompted for the password for that user. So we'll go ahead and enter in the password and press enter. And if it's successful, we should get a success message, and we did. And this is what you're looking for. If you get a failure message, it could be go back and check the steps that we previously did. Make sure that the firewall port is open, and also just make sure that your machines, if you're doing this in a lab environment, make sure that your machines are on the same network and that they can communicate. So that's it for this demo. It's real short, just setting up WinRM and Windows Server 2022, which will allow you to access and manage it from Ansible. In the next post, we'll be going over the inventory files in a bit more detail, and then we'll get into the playbooks. Thanks a lot for watching.